Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where in the world you're joining us from. Welcome to our expert panel, AI Infrastructure That Scales, Foundations for Real-World Deployment, brought to you by our friends at Scale, Rhino Federated Computing, SAP, and Udemy Business. I'm Brian Mink, co-founder and president of Data Science Connect, the world's largest data and AI ecosystem for enterprise leaders. Today, we're excited to welcome hundreds of attendees from all over the world to explore the key role of infrastructure in real-world AI deployment at scale. In this session, we'll go beyond prototypes and pilot programs to discuss what it really takes to build AI infrastructure that holds up under production demands. From GPU scheduling and model orchestration to observability, governance, and scaling compute across hybrid environments, this discussion is for teams ready to move past the lab and into sustained delivery. Our panel of leaders will break down architectural trade-offs, emerging best practices, and the organizational realities of supporting production-grade AI. We're honored to hear from a distinguished panel of experts today. Adrish Sannyasi, VP of Customer Solutions at Rhino Federated Computing, Dave Mariani, co-founder and CTO at Scale, and our moderator, Erik Bauch, Vice President of Data and Analytics at Constant Content. Before we begin, a few housekeeping items. To make this a little more in person, we suggest you add a photo to your profile and include your bio, LinkedIn profile, and other information you want your fellow attendees to see. Next, please take advantage of the Q&A and chat features in the right sidebar. We'll be addressing your questions throughout the webinar, so be sure to upvote the questions you'd like the panel to address. If you're wondering where your organization stands compared to others on your AI journey, check out the poll questions in the right sidebar. And finally, to learn more about how to build AI infrastructure that scales, check out the calls to action below throughout the webinar from our sponsors. Now, without further ado, I'm excited to kick off our panel, and I'll bring Erik, Dave, and Adrish on the stage, and turn things over to our moderator, Erik. Welcome, Erik. Welcome, guys.
Well, thanks so much, Brian, for the kind intro. Very happy to be here. Dave, Adrish, I couldn't be more excited to be here with you today and ask you some questions about this little thing called AI world that's transforming everything at a very fast pace. Little fun fact on the side: I am in Boston currently. I believe your companies are also both located in Boston. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yep. That Skills based in Boston.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool to see that things are actually happening in Boston. And I think Brian and I, we met actually at a seminar event exactly here in Boston. Before kicking it off, we only got an intro about both of you. Feel free to reintroduce yourself. I think you have very interesting backgrounds, and it's useful for the teams to know where the expertise is coming from. But the first question I wanted to ask you is actually a little bit about how you think about the AI ecosystem that you currently see, how customers are implementing it, and then where your two companies in particular are slotting in, right? Which aspect of the AI ecosystem are they addressing? So maybe we'll kick it off with that. Dave, you on my left side here, so I'll hand it over to you, and then we'll go with Adrish.
Great, thanks, Erik. At Scale, we make a universal semantic layer, and so we were the first to sort of set that, create that category. That was like 13 years ago now, and so for probably the first 10 years of our history, we've been focusing on single source of truth and business meaning for business intelligence. And so it's really, large enterprises who have lots of different BI tools. We're all struggling with, business metrics drifting across those different tools and having a real difficulty with being able to have one single set of metrics, one place where customers could go to consume data easily in a business-friendly manner. Well, here we are today, and it turns out that same sort of architecture, meaning business meaning, semantic meaning, is really important for AI. And so with LLMs that are trained on the general internet, they really need a bridge into enterprise data. And so we serve as that bridge for conversational AI and BI, as well as headless agents, to be able to talk to enterprise data, but talk to them through a business context. And so as the semantic layer really benefited, business intelligence, well, it's really benefiting AI, because AI and agents need that same sort of bridge, that same adapter to make enterprise data, which is very custom, very bespoke, and make that work for LLMs. So that's what we do.
Yeah, and thank you for giving the context. And I'm probably not lying saying I think semantic layer is now the hot topic, at least from all the data spaces I'm following. But Adrish, your company also addresses a very particular element of the AI ecosystem. Would love to hear some more about that too.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Adrish and I'm from Rhino Federated Computing. So what we do is we build a federated computing platform where organizations can run an analysis or train a model, or deploy a model across federated data. That means data is not centralized. Data could be in a different business units within the same organization, where it cannot be centralized for a variety of reasons, like regulatory concern or geographical separation or business unit separation, etc. Or one organization wants to work with their partners or the customers to train a joint model. In this kind of situation, centralization is not possible. So you operate across 100 plus active edge nodes in multi-cloud environments or on-prem data centers. And also we cut across multiple industries like healthcare, life sciences, financial services, transportation, and public sector. And we solve this problem of data access cross organization or within the same organization silos.
Very nice. I find this personally a very fascinating topic because I come from the other side of things where my team builds a centralized data layer, or data warehouse, so to say. And I think your company addresses a different use case, right, where you don't build out this centralized warehouse. So we'll talk about that a lot more. Before kicking it off for the next questions, and very quickly, Dave and Adrish, I'm curious, and we'll bounce it over back to you, Dave. How did you end up in this space? I'm curious a little bit, right?
Yeah, I mean, it really sort of began from, being a data leader. And it really came true for me at Yahoo. So I ran the analytics teams for Yahoo back in the day, and really struggled with delivering analytics in a usable form to the business. And so in those days, everybody was built their own analytics stack. And so, Yahoo has, a bunch of different properties like finance, sports, homepage, as well as, they sell advertising. So search and display advertising. And so we had all these different silos of data. And then we also had silos of analytics on that data. And what I ended up doing with hundreds of people is basically making big data small and then sending it off to all these different silos, which would then do their own munging and come up with different definitions for clicks and impressions. And so it made it very, very difficult, if not impossible, to sort of compare the different businesses and to understand where we need to make investments. And so, so the business wasn't happy because they had to do a bunch of extra work, and the business users weren't happy because of that. Although they like to use the tools that they were comfortable with, MicroStrategy, Tableau, ClickView, we had them all. But the enterprise or the management team wasn't happy because we couldn't really run the business from a cohesive fashion. So that's where really we tried to build a semantic layer at Yahoo. We tried to use off-the-shelf parts and open source, and just figured that it was a gap in the market, that there nothing that really existed. And so me and some ex-Yahoos, we launched at scale to really solve that problem. And again, we started with data lakes because we invented Hadoop at Yahoo as well. And so data lakes were sort of our first go-to-market data platform. Later came the cloud data platforms like Snowflake and Databricks and BigQuery. But the problem we solved is, now more relevant than ever, as I mentioned, because business context is really important when you have machines and LLMs trying to do business.
Yeah, I want to talk about, fascinating. I want to definitely talk about the rise in popularity of semantic layers and federated computing. Well, I think this is a very interesting topic. Adrish, what about you? How did you end up in this space, federated computing? How did you end up at Rhino?
Yeah, let me talk a little bit about the Rhino's history a little bit. So our founder is working at Mass General Hospital, and he wanted to build a model during COVID time to predict the severity of the disease for the COVID patients. And as you remember, in a single hospital, you could only have data corresponding to only that population. In order to create a good model at that time, he collaborated with the 20 other institution across the world, and partner with NVIDIA to create this first version of federated learning. And that was the proof point of how federated learning could be useful, not only during COVID, but in general, for creating better model, generalizable model that could be utilized, that could utilize the data across multiple organizations, because most organizations are not like using internet data. Internet data might be used by ChatGPT and they buy data from other sources. But for organization to build their vertical specific models, they don't have enough data. If you look at the scaling law requires you to actually get more and more data to make it better. So that's kind of origin story of Rhino. How I came into this is I spend more of my life in either working in the database system. I used to work at Oracle, or building complex data warehouses in complex industries like healthcare, public sector, financial services, and so on. And that's why I got a background of how to make this data thing work in a complex industries. And then I was Google Cloud doing a number of early customer engagement on AI in medical imaging, AlphaFold, and genomics, etc. So that's I got some interesting background, and I met Itai, who's his founder, and thought it'd be a good opportunity to expand my role here. So that's the way I end up in Rhino.
Very nice, and I'm sure they're all glad to have you. Fantastic. Let's talk a little bit about AI infrastructure, right? For the listeners here, and I think for CTOs, CIOs, CDOs around the world, the one question they're probably all trying to answer right now: what do I need actually to make AI happening in a company? I mean, I live it myself. I'm supporting the CTO and a couple other senior leaders in my company with those decisions. So I feel like I live it from the other side, So I'm curious to see what you both think. What's actually needed for production-ready AI infrastructure, and your companies address one specific aspect, but I'm also curious in general to see what other elements do you need. And then we'll start with you, Adrish, this time. So we'll switch it up a little bit.
Yeah, no problem. So what I see in terms of what our customers want, or also we are building something internally as well for our own executive consumption. The first thing the customer need that I've seen from our customers is they want reliability, stability of the system. Whatever they're doing, they're running their business, so it cannot be error out in the middle of their transaction or middle of their work. That's totally annoying. It actually make them less productive. The AI is supposed to make them more productive, but if you're not stable or not reliable, that's minimum. Second thing, what I've seen is there is a huge need or expectations on speed. People want a very fast turnaround time on development to deployment to value. So the speed of execution matters a lot, especially for a company like us, a small company, startup company. Speed is one of the advantage we have compared to large companies, and customer expects us to do that. And the third thing is scalability. I can do something in pilot or my laptop. Can it be utilized, in a production settings? Just doing pilot is not good enough. You want to be, building this towards the scale. So in order to do all of these things, I could say there are, 4 or 5 different components that should be part of any consideration by a CTO or CIO organization. First thing is obviously having a good compute infrastructure, because GPU is not like automatically available all the time to everybody. So having that availability, having that infrastructure in place, whether you're using Kubernetes cluster, building your own, or you are renting from Google Cloud or AWS, other places, that needs to be available and secure. All the basic cloud stuff should be already be there. The second thing that we do, and especially on the security and governance side, so we have a security policies we apply that apply across multi-cloud. It could be applied to different data sources or different compute layers, and who can access the model, who can download the model, who writes the code, who evaluates the agents. So making sure this security and governance in place. One of the things that, for example, we're seeing is previously, before LLM, people mainly worked with structured data. So now today, a lot of the data is unstructured, like PDFs are important, imaging data is important. But previously, CISOs did not worry about access to those data sets because those data sets are kind of deleted or nobody really need to access those outside of few people. But now think about, now everybody needs to access those, at least the agents and the developers working on this. So that creates a security headache. And that needs to be taken care of by some policy. And that's actually one of the blockers, could be one of the blockers. Then third is a thing that we're talking about here, having a data that is aligned with AI. For example, semantic layer is really important. If you want to automate things, you want to have decision makings done by semi-automated fashion, this semantic layer becomes like a have to have it. Without that, agent will not understand the difference between different terminology that you're using in your enterprise. So data building those semantic layers, some kind of notion of semantics would be important. And then after the data, you have this model layer. So model could be the foundation model that you might be using, but a lot of our industry that we operate in, we do a lot of language model specific to industry. Like we have a protein language model who works in biology or for biopharma. We also have a surgical, electronic medical record specific models and imaging specific model, etc. So having that kind of understanding of the models and having a good model card, so that people who are your user of the model understand how the model was created, evaluation of the model, how to use the model, etc. is very clear. So that like a registry is important. And then next layer is what we call orchestration layer. So that means someone's to orchestrate all the tasks. It could be the multi-agent task or maybe an workflow from data pre-processing, ETL, running inference, running fine-tuning, etc., or maybe just running an applications workflow. So that's the orchestration layer is why we invest a lot of our engineering time. And lastly, I would say the last layer is kind of in a flux right now. Like people are moving from a click-based UI to different types of UI. It could be a form, could be a natural language, could be Claude. I think that's where I think we're seeing a lot of flux. But you need some kind of interface, and in many cases, we need an interface to see whether the agent or model is actually doing a good job. And it could be observability in terms of the monitoring of the infrastructure, but could be interface for human in the loop to understand the model behavior and so on. So you need different types of interface, and thinking through that as part of infrastructure would be valuable.
Yeah, just to be clear, because I haven't used Rhino myself, it sounds like this is almost like a turnkey solution, right? You provide all of
we are the difference between Rhino and other general platform. We are like a vertically integrated solution, starting from compute layer up to the orchestration layer, and of course we have an REST API and this SDK that our customer uses to create different applications. But we are kind of a vertically integrated product.
So, for example, if the customer had at scale already as a semantic layer, they could tie it in with yours. So maybe that's a way. So Dave, talk about at scale a little bit. How does that fit into the infrastructure? And then also, what are you seeing on the market on what customers are what else are they looking for, right, in terms of what they need?
Yeah, you know, like one of our core principles when we founded the company was to be open, and open meaning that give people the ability to plug things into it, meaning the semantic layer, and then plug the semantic layer into different data platforms. And so being that Switzerland really gave our customers, which is what I wanted at Yahoo, the ability to sort of move into the future without risk of being sort of pinned into one approach. So when I think about scalable infrastructure, I think it needs to be open and fungible, and it needs to be able to serve many masters, because we don't know where this stuff is going. And so what you see a lot of today in the semantic layer space is you see a lot of newbies who are coming on the scene and saying, "Oh, guess what? We have a semantic layer." And it's the BI tool guys, it's the Tableaus and the Power BIs. And it's like, yeah, you do have a semantic layer that's wedded to your specific analytics tool. But that's not where you want to be. You don't want to place all your bets there, because now we see with agents, we don't know where it's going to go. There's all kinds of agents, there's all kinds of chatbots, and you shouldn't have to pick one. You need to have a platform that's going to allow you to do different things in the future. And then you also have the vendors like Snowflake and Databricks who are saying, hey, the semantic layer should live in the data platform. And we all know that data is everywhere, including in different SaaS applications, and we don't know where that's going to. And with open formats like Iceberg, more customers that I talk to are saying, you know what, we're going to store our data as Iceberg so that we can sort of attach any engine to it. So being wedded into a single data platform is also risky. So what I would just encourage listeners and customers, and I all the time, is this, like, make sure that when you make these investments that in AI, in this infrastructure, that you do it in a way that's going to allow you to be able to morph into the future, and that you can plug and play without worrying about making the wrong bet with the wrong vendor.
I appreciate that. I love also the two positions. Adrish, I almost feel like you probably want to respond to that, right? And maybe give your viewpoint, because clearly your company is successful
Yeah.
too. Right? So
We actually love this kind of approach because we work across multiple clouds. Think about how many data sources I need to connect to. We're connecting to S3 Bucket, GCP, BigQuery, Snowflake, Databricks, and then so on. And even on-prem, SMB, we connected to SMB, we connected to NFS. So having this kind of industry approach of having a iceberg type of format that I can switch, no matter which cloud I go to, which platform I go to, is very valuable from our perspective.
very nice. Cool. All right. Let's switch gears for a little bit. We'll stay with AI, of course. I think 2026 is one of the years though where rubber meets the road, and I think a lot of companies are trying to move away from prototypes to actually real production, real production level AI at a large scale. And I'm very curious to hear what you see from your customers that, probably, were in the former bucket, maybe sometime last year, maybe they're still this year. But as they go through this transition, what is really changing? I have my own viewpoints. Every company is going through that, be lying if saying our company doesn't. But I'm really curious to see the two of you who work with customers, where's the market going, right? And how does it shift essentially the demand for the tools and the seriousness? And is there maybe even a priority change or something they cared about before less, they now care a lot more about reliability, scalability, I'm sure some of these things. But Dave, we'll kick it off with you on this one.
Yeah, so you've all we've read the press about prototypes and the failures that we've seen enterprises sort of encounter because they're trying to, they get stuck in the prototype phase. And so what I've seen with prospects is that, in talking to people, is that it's like they tried to sort of prompt engineer their way out of their problem. So if you don't have the context for AI, if you don't have a semantic layer, for example, what I've seen people do, like they take like Databricks Genie, which is a chatbot, and they keep on adding more instructions to their Genie workspace. And so I've heard a lot of sort of horror stories of basically they're trying to create semantics within a space and with instructions, basically prompt engineering to the LLM. And that's just not a scalable way of doing it. It just will never work because the business changes too fast and you can't keep on attacking. It's like whack-a-mole. You can't keep on adding more instructions every time you see the LLM go off into the weeds or return a poor answer. So I've seen that being a very anti-pattern of trying to prompt engineer your way out of it. And I think that it's what I've seen sort of success is people who have focused on the data first and the governance first. Because another problem is we haven't talked about is governance. It's like how do you keep people in their lanes? I mean, with an AI agent, humans can like do damage on their own, but imagine agents at machine scale. They can do a lot of damage and they don't know any better about what they're doing. So you got to have that governance and that control plane. You got to have that business meeting. You got to have that control plane. And so companies that have been successful have taken and leveraged their investments in semantic layers for business intelligence and extended that for AI. And I have a big customer who said, you know what, we were able to get approval to do this project because we already have 5,000 users using the semantic layer for doing Power BI and Excel. So there's already comfort that the governance is covered and that the answers are right. So adding another client, which I believe LLMs are more than just another client, believe me. But at least there's some comfort that there is the proper infrastructure in place. So that's the pattern that I've seen that's worked. The anti-pattern is to try to prompt engineer your way out of hallucinations.
Fantastic. Yeah, fascinating. I like to jokingly say AI is making governance sexy again, because I work for companies where the CTOs had very little interest in investing anything in government. And to your point, if you build that semantic layer for reporting, for example, you're in a much better shape now for AI. So just for the
Erik, I don't know if that I would call governance sexy, but it's relevant. It's relevant for sure.
So governance first. Everyone heard it here from Dave. Adrish, I'm sure you see similar things, right, on your side of the.
Yeah, I agree with you that governance is definitely, you touched on it, semantic layer. That's absolutely one of the key needs. I'll give you some more whatever other perspective I see that could be helpful here. So one thing that I've seen a customer may miss or is around understanding the economics of this AI. For example, understanding how inference works is important, and because inference is a huge cost right now not for the just large language model, but the models that we are running, vertical specific model or smaller model, inference is a big, because every model is kind of big right now. 10 GB minimum or 5 GB minimum, and you cannot really run a lot of concurrent jobs, etc., in single machine. So understand the economics of inference is a very critical, step, because a lot of the customers never use this kind of model every day, because now inference is part of ETL. Inference is part of anything that you're doing. So it becomes much more like an application. So that means your GPU previously used only for training purposes, and you may be needing GPU only for training or maybe for few models, but now you need for everything 24/7. That creates a different economics in terms of you have to evaluate whether you want to rent from cloud, or maybe you just buy a GPU for yourself, or may have to reserve GPUs because GPUs are not available on demand nowadays. If you go and ask a GPU in AWS account for yours, you may not get any GPU. So planning around that becomes very important. So we have spent a lot of time internally for many of our customers to figure out this inference strategy that aligns with our cost and also aligns with SLAs of the customer, based on latency and then some throughput requirements. So that's definitely something to learn about FinOps and how GPU optimization and inference works. And the second thing I would say that all the software engineering best practices we have, we have to, we know that you need to build the, get that into ML, but now it becomes more important. Like you need to have a way to, track the code, track whatever agent is doing, but not only that, having a good testing methodology. Evaluation is nothing but testing, with the right data sets, etc. So having that cycle of combining AI best practices around evaluation and also software engineering best practices around version control of data, version control of the models, and so on. That becomes part of the governance, in my mind, and that sometimes a lot of data science organizations don't have good handle on. Because they don't really have this kind of production level stuff done in AI, before. So I think there's a lot of learning curve there.
Yeah, I love that. That is such a good addition to what Dave said. I think that makes a lot of sense. We'll talk about cost actually a little bit more, but in a way, almost the way I see this is a governance allows you to scale the usage of tools, right? And then you hit other bottlenecks. Cost is one of them, right? And in software engineering best practices, if you don't follow those, then AI can't parse any of those. That makes a lot of sense. So just to summarize for everyone, focus on the governance so you can bring up the scale, and then quickly switch over to software best practices and also cost monitoring. And maybe that's our segue into the next topic. Before doing that, I just want to also encourage the audience to post questions. I'm happy to slot them in here as they fit, and then leave the other ones for the rest. So feel free to chime in. When I go to panels like this, I always enjoy audience questions. So I'll make sure you're being heard. So let's talk about cost. It's actually a very hot topic right now because of some developments in the market. Cursor just changed their pricing model, and it makes a lot of companies actually go, okay, haywire. I don't know if you've heard of it, but we had to deal with that just today. So let's talk about cost for a little bit. Dave, I'm curious to hear actually your side of the perspective, because the semantic layer, I'm sure you do more than just maintaining essentially text files describing the semantic layer. Where does cost come in for your customers?
Yeah, that's great segue. It's a great question. So, for the semantic layer, so one of the things we had to solve is that when you look at BI tools like Power BI and Tableau, they use extracts to make things fast, meaning you import data into those tools, they store it in their own proprietary format as a cache to allow you to get really fast response. And the challenge with a semantic layer that is independent is that not only you have to replicate that caching speed, because if it's not fast enough, then they're going to avoid the semantic layer and go and end round you and import data into those tools. And now you have a silo, and now you just haven't solved any problem whatsoever, because that silo can drift. So one of the things about a semantic layer for BI is that you've got to have that caching layer. That caching layer ends up, also saving you money on your cloud data costs. So, so when we talk about cost, if you think about it, right, when a bunch of enterprises moved from on-prem to the cloud, and when they saw their costs skyrocket, because now that cloud data was much more accessible to many more people. Mm. And then you also have people who are writing queries that could run forever. And so when you're paying up by the drink, you're paying on compute, malformed queries can cost you a lot of money. And I've seen cases where queries have costed our customers $10,000 because they're doing some crazy Cartesian product join on billions of rows. So I think a semantic layer does a couple things for cost. Number one, using that caching layer means that you're not going to be paying for repetitive queries. So you're not going to be answering the same question every single time against all of the atomic data. And number two, since it's machine generated from a map that maps physical to logical, you know that those queries are going to be as efficient as possible. So you're going to prevent the dumb queries that end up running and going crazy. So now that does that for humans, for BI. Think about what it does for AI. Now you have AI who could do a lot more damage because it can issue hundreds more queries than a human can in the same amount of time. And if you're asking it to navigate your physical data, boy, can it do things incorrectly or inefficiently. So I think the semantic layer helps from a cost perspective on those two fronts: machine generated queries that are trustworthy and efficient, and caching layer that will prevent repetitive queries from running up your cloud costs.
Yeah, we live that every day. I feel you so much. This is and it feels these AI tools are so easy to use. It just feels everything is for free, you know, and then you get the bill, and then you learn it's not for free. Adrish, you mentioned a few things, and I want to just dive in, because I think that is really important too for the people that do the deploy their own models, for example, right? And so maybe you can highlight again to the audience and me also where costs come in for your customers, right? The running queries on a semantic layer, repeatability, not only humans running queries or Tableau dashboards or BI dashboards, but also AI is one piece of cost. But I think the hardware piece that you brought in is also quite relevant to understand.
Yeah, for us, we run workflows. Like you get a data from a source, and then you run some kind of pre-processing jobs, which is like a mostly CPU intensive. You don't really need GPU for that. And then you have the data ready for inference or training. And then that portion requires a GPU. And we also run some post-processing applications or APIs. That part also doesn't require GPU. So kind of segregating the task into multiple subtasks, and then figuring out this multiple subtasks could be its own application. For us, it's like a different containers. So I have a different container for pre-processing, inference, and post-processing, and we run it in a different workload specific compute. For some it could be 5, let's say 4 GPU machine, or maybe others I need 4 CPU machine, another I need a GPU machine. And then post-processing could run pretty much in CPU. So I think segregating that, having a different packaging, and then running it in a different compute environment, that's like a fundamental. That's like a number one thing you could do to reduce any cost. The second thing is working with your customer. That's why understanding the business use case is really important. Like not all use cases you need sub-second response time. Maybe you are doing a fraud detection, real-time fraud detection, that requires you to have very low latency. But let's say you are, creating a protein structure, properties, etc. For that, you don't really need to have a sub-second response time. Even if it takes 1 minute or 10 minutes, nothing is going to change. So giving that kind of SLA type of agreement with the users or the customer, and then aligning the needs of the infrastructure with that will be helpful. For example, if you don't care about that much about the latency, maybe worrying about just about throughput, then you may have a queuing system. You have a pool of VMs that is supporting multiple workload, multiple customers, so that the cost gets divided and distributed
a lot, because we've touched on some aspects. But this question is, what are the biggest shifts that need to be made in infrastructure when going from Gen AI LLM workloads to supporting agents? And if I interpret this question correctly, it's like, if you use Gen AI, it's using something like Claude Code or Cursor to do your own work. And I think this question goes a little bit more, now the agent does a bunch of stuff, right? So an AI interacts with your infrastructure. So very curious to hear what you both think, how that changes actually the equation. Just for context, we talked about, Adrish, you in particular talked about how the processes need to change, right? You need to change, you need to now version control things, you need to put in software engineering best practices, because you want co-develop, or you want AI to have all this context. So I think you addressed already the process part, or what humans need to change. This is, I think, in particularly tailored at is there anything we need to change in the infrastructure, right? So Dave, maybe we'll kick it off with you.
So in terms of between the models and the agent, we have to also think one of the mindset is to agent is also like a ML model. Like we have to go through this build, evaluate, and then deploy cycle for the agent as well, so that you are not building the model in this case. You have a task evaluation data. Somebody's looking at whether the agent is doing a good job or not, and having that part of the process is the number one, because that building it as like an ML workflow. So that's a minimum. The second thing that agent might change in terms of the infrastructure is sometimes people say everything agent, but you need to define between what is predefined workflow and what is agentic workflow. Predefined workflow is not exactly agent. Like if I know exactly what 1, 2, 3 steps are, that's like a workflow manager, and I know exactly how much workload I need, which data is accessing. It's much more clear to me, and that could be managed in a different way than agentic workflow, where maybe workflows are getting created dynamically based on the intermediate results, right? In this case, I may not know exactly how many GPUs I need, or maybe how many CPUs I need, or maybe what data sources, or maybe authentication. Suddenly there's a requirement. So having some kind of way for agent to know the limit and interrupt, and having somebody then come in and see whether this is still a job agent can do, having those kind of interruption methodology in place, so that agent cannot go and use all the GPUs, for example, available, or something that is not security aligned. So having this kind of interruption or knowing this notification, the observability becomes very, very important in this space. ML needs observability. For agent, observability is like a number one tool, because you need to know when things are going wrong and need to have a good detection system to notify and intervene at that time. So having this observability agent ops or agent observability system developed as a minimum requirement, so that we don't make mistakes.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. So the guardrails are extremely important, because you don't have a human who says pick this CPU. You have literally an agent that can toggle all the switches on at the same time and eat up all your resources in literally no time. That's fascinating. Dave, humans have used semantic layers well before AI agents, right? You've used them for making dashboards. What shift have you seen now, agents hooking into these semantic layers, right?
Yeah, I know. Adrish talked about observability, and so, but I think what's really important now that you have agents that are actually going out and acting on data and doing stuff autonomously, you got to have a way of tracking the quality of that work. So you got to invest in a framework to measure quality. And so one of the things that we've encountered, just in terms of like, okay, so we have an MCP server that's answering questions on the semantic layer. How do we build a regression suite that will measure whether it gave it the right answer? Because we know that LLMs are probabilistic. So they're going to ask the question a little bit differently every time. So what we come up with is like a score of 0 to 1, 1 being accurate, and then measuring the quality on that score, so that that if there's some kind of a change and that dropped from 0.89 to 0.70, that there's something we need to look at. But I think there needs to be some automated way for you to be able to judge the quality of the work of the agents. And some people are talking about agents that check on the work of other agents. And so it can get really crazy, but you need to have a framework to know before you unleash the agents, to know whether they're doing what they're doing right. And if you don't, the first thing that goes wrong, you're not going to know how to prevent it in the future if you don't have a way of measuring it.
Fantastic segue. Any concrete tools you recommend? Is it the in-house tools that you have developed? Any tools here? Because observability, couldn't agree more. I mean, What kind of tooling do you recommend for that?
I wish I could give you an answer to that, but I think it's just early days right now. There are observability tools out there that have been they're fairly mature, but they're really sort of log based. And I don't know. I think there's a real opportunity for anybody who's looking to start a company out there. There probably is a whole new segment there where where you can have a way of a system to check the quality of the work of agents. But Erik, I don't have an answer for you.
Anything on your side, Adrish?
Yeah, we are evaluating number of tools right now for that, and there are some open source tools like Phoenix OSS and others that has a good foundation. LangChain has some tools as well in this respect, but it needs to be customized for your requirements. So I think this is why the build versus buy decision comes into picture. I think you can either use some of these tools like LangChain or this Phoenix or etc., or you can take some of these open source tool and then kind of make it on your own based on your use case requirements.
Very nice. That's very cool. I have two more questions. We're almost at time, so we got to make it quick. But we might not get to the local LLM thing, but maybe next time. Curious to hear from both of you. AI is developing very, very fast. What's the thing you track of right now? What do you think is like worthwhile paying attention to, that you think is the latest, hottest development that you think could reshape how technology evolves in the next year? So let's say next year, because anything else is probably crazy to think even longer. Is there anything that you personally track?
I'm optimistic about a lot of the new inference chips coming up. There is actually one announcement in GTC from NVIDIA. They acquired another company called Grok, which is not Grok by, not Elon Musk Grok, it's GROQ, and specialized inference chips. Because right now, one of the important problem I'm solving, and also a lot of people are solving, is how to run inference efficient way, because that's a bottleneck. That economics may not work for a lot of people. If you're spending a lot of money, even in Claude, you're not getting ROI, you're going to stop the project. So I think that's one of the critical things for industry, and also it's something that I'm very interested in, passionate about.
Yeah, wonderful. Dave, what do you track?
It's like it's more use case driven. So I think we see the first killer use case for LLMs, which is code generation. That's definitely a killer use case. So what is the next use case? I'm always on the lookout for that, and also on the lookout for these open source agent frameworks. I mean, you probably hear a lot about OpenClaw, and there's a lot to be desired there from a security perspective. So I'm just wondering, what's next for agent frameworks, and are we going to see open source alternatives that are really going to catch on? So use cases and agent frameworks is sort of the thing that I always sort of keep an eye on.
Very nice. What do you think is the next hot use case beyond programming?
For us, it's working on a lot of drug discovery is a very relevant use case and has a potential to save significant amount of money for whole ecosystem, because right now people spend a lot of time, resources on clinical trial, and they spend money on the drug that may not go to production at all. So if you can prevent that using AI by predicting the failure rate before even go to clinical trial, that's a huge value add. And those are the use cases I'm passionate about, and we're working towards those kind of use cases to make this successful, make a better model, to have better inference on those use cases or predictions. I would say there are a lot of other interest in healthcare and financial services in industries, building models, and that vertical specific models that solves the problem very much in a much more accurately than what we can do today, or even what you can do just using LLMs. So I'm very passionate about those vertical specific problems, where we can add significant value to, using AI.
Yeah. All right. With time, I want to give you both the last word. What's the one advice you want to give to our audience, and to me maybe? Keep it short, but want to thank you also for attending. I thought it was a fantastic session. Leave it with the last word, Dave. You get the second to last, and Adrish gets the last word.
Okay, thanks, Erik. You're a great moderator, by the way. Thanks for it was a great conversation. I would just say invest in business meaning, a context layer. You gotta understand. You gotta to take advantage of Gen AI. You gotta build a bridge to your enterprise data, and only you know what your business meaning is. So you got to find a way to share it with this fantastic new set of technologies.
Love it.
Yeah, for me, don't throw away any data like PDFs, images. Use everything that you have and make them available for AI.
Love that too. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen. Wish you a good Wednesday, and I'm sure we'll see each other again. The world is small. The AI world is small.
Thanks, Erik.
Excellent. Thanks to all of you. And if you miss any of this webinar, want to rewatch anything, you can refresh this page right after the webinar, and it will be at the same URL. And we'll also send out a link to the recording tomorrow. Thanks again to Erik, Dave, and Adrish for an excellent discussion. And thank you, of course, to our partners at Rhino Federated Computing, At Scale, B2B Business, and SAP for making this great discussion possible. And we'll see all of you again next time. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.